hair. When you're like, and the reason we're giving you this is because now your razor situation is different than it was before. But we probably should have given you this lesson sometime in the past. But we didn't think we needed to, but at any rate, we have chosen to give you this lesson. When you're shaving, first of all, you should use a modest amount of shave cream. Now, some of your classmates have complained that they need first in order for their beard to be soft enough to be easy to shave, which really isn't necessarily so. Like, what I do is if I'm just getting up or washed my face, or if I'm going into the BC and I'm going to shave in a few minutes, then the first thing I'll do, if I haven't done it a few minutes before, is go put some soapy water on my face and leave the soapy water on my face. That doesn't mean I leave studs, but I put some soapy water on my hands and then put the soapy water where my beard is. And then a couple of minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending upon what else I'm doing in that period of time, it allows my beard to soften. Okay? That means that it's going to be easier to shave. I'm not going to cut myself as much, and I'm not going to tear up the razor as quickly. And it also is a way to avoid feeling like you need to shower before you shave in order to get a good shave. And then, let's say that I did that a few minutes before shaving, and then I went back, well, I do it again in order to have my face real wet and just a little bit of soap. And then on top of my face being real wet with a little bit of soap in it, then I take a little shaving cream and use just about the size of a $50, or if it's put way high, even smaller than that, because a very thin layer goes a long way. And some overuse shaving cream, use it unnecessarily where they don't need to use that much. So a small amount of shave cream, put the shave cream on, and then let's say that you have, and what I do is then put the blade under water, warm or very warm to hot water, so that if any residue that might have been on there is washed off quickly. And when it's warm, it seems to cut more smoothly when the blade is warm. And then in shaving, go pretty much with the grain, as against maybe like when you were an adolescent and you first started shaving, and every time you shaved, you wanted your face to feel like a baby's skin where you couldn't feel any beard. If you go all over your face carefully, as slowly as your time will permit, not real slow, but don't go fast and just scrape, or don't scrape one direction, then turn around and scrape the other direction. Or you're going to end up with your skin all irritated. You're going to ruin the blade quickly, irritate your skin, and if your skin is anything like mine, if I do more than just a couple of strokes on an area that I'm shaving, I'll take the top off the pores. And so then my skin is sore. And a lot of times it doesn't feel by the time you shave again. So the way to keep the skin from being sore is to not necessarily try to get the beard as close as you can possibly get it. Just try to go over every place that you have some beard growing and get what you can get in going over it just a time or two, no more than that. But if you then go back and try to hunt spots that there's a little bit of beard or a little tiny bit that if you went in another direction, you could get it right down to baby skin. You'll irritate your skin, use the blade up too quickly, and it won't be a good procedure. So we're telling you that. Another thing is like when you're, if you do the same thing, if you're going to, say you want to use the razor and get a little hair off your neck, and that you might be doing that once in a while as part of your shaving routine. If you can turn your head and see out of the side enough to clean those spots, I would do it when I notice that the blade is toward the end of its usefulness. Even though it doesn't necessarily mean by doing that I've killed the razor. Because if I will put warm, soapy water on my hands and on those areas, it will not tear the blade up that quickly. And it will not irritate my skin by doing it. But if you just take a dry razor to it, it will irritate the skin and will tear the blade up. So the hair would still, again, need to be softened there as well, and clean your razor after any of those usages. Any questions? Anybody?
You're not saying to use shaving cream or
I don't think you need to. I've never used any. I just use a little soapy water. Just as easy.
Somebody made the comment thinking my beard was heavy and I hadn't shaved, but when I shaved at 6:30 or 7:30 in the morning, it really had my hair.
You could shave before going to work.
You could if you want to. Doesn't matter to us. Or if you like it better the way it is, if you'd rather be clean shaven during the day in your craft, it's your choice. I would be uncomfortable because it's also growing all during the time you're down. And I would rather be fairly clean shaven all day during my time at the craft than I would at the autocraft camp. And I don't really think it makes that much difference. Many men have fair skin and dark beard and a fairly heavy beard that they can walk out of shaving and it looks like they've got a violet-like shadow just because of the contrast between a fair skin and a dark beard that's fairly heavy. So I wouldn't be concerned about it.
The only thing is if they brought it to your attention.
Has your employer brought it to your attention?
A couple of times he's checked me, just looked at me more closely, but he made a comment, but then he said, "Oh, I realize you have beard."
Well, I agree with T that if you think if you feel like it doesn't look good and it's expected at your task that you be clean shaven, there would be no harm in shaving before you go. And as a matter of fact, some people, I don't know what T thinks about this, but some people with heavy beards can go over their beard lightly, even a second time if they need to. But what do you say?
Well, I think in Dodie's place, I don't think anyone else needs to do this, and
No.
they have reason to do it. But if you feel like at the time that you are going to work and you feel like your beard has grown some, then there wouldn't be any harm for you and Dodie to shave the second time. Okay? Is that what you were saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm. You can try it different ways. You can try shaving before you go to your autocraft test and shaving only then and seeing how it feels and how much beard seems to grow and how unkept you may feel in the craft. And you can try shaving twice, see if that works. Okay? Any other questions on this shaving routine?
You do is shaving while I was showering, and I've been doing that.
Never been a procedure.
Just to get out the habit of doing things.
No, that's misapplication of that. Mm-hmm. And,
In a sense, it's too much water usage. In other words, while you're standing there, the water's going, right? Or do you have the water off?
I have to get my face on. I can just...
You turn it off? Okay. But it isn't, the thing that we were talking about in regards to that, we don't want you to be upset if you can't do everything the same way every day. In other words, we don't want you to say, well, I can't function properly if I don't do this before I do something.
right, if I don't take my shower first.
No, I can't shave right if I don't take my shower first. My beard is too tough. That's what we're talking about when we say don't do things. Don't
We're
feel
not
like
trying
you
to
have.
get you to change things all the time in your routine.
We have a
We
routine.
just didn't want you set so that you can function if circumstances cause you to need to change.
Because as you get your procedure worked out, you can move more quickly. But again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I don't feel like if something has to change that you have to have it a certain way. That's what we were talking about.
And we've never had a procedure for shaving in the shower. For female vehicles or male vehicles.
Even females shaving in the showers. They're shaving their legs or anything. Better not do it with electric rays. Of course, we only have one, but... Okay, any questions? More questions on this one?
Okay, I'm going to stop this and start on the other side. Because that's what we're going to talk to you about. That's what you are. What we want to help you zero in just a little bit more on your concept of not because that's what we're going to talk to you about. Because that's what you are. What we want to help you zero in just a little bit more on your concept of not spending energy and remembering that when you receive medicine, what does medicine do? It stimulates you. You understand what we're saying? When you receive a lesson or a circumstance that you can recognize as medicine is coming down, it, in a sense, is stimulating your vehicle. Now, it's natural stimulus. It's nothing that you are doing to stimulate your vehicle. And this stimulus is an extremely valuable thing in your change. And it's never to be regretted or to be resented. And some of you have a hard time getting past still resenting and regretting medicine. Now, when you get, it's just like if you add too much stimulus, or you get too much stimulus, so you put too much fertilizer on the plant, it can burn it if the plant doesn't know how to digest it, if it hasn't learned how to assimilate that plant food. And the same thing with you. We have taught you how to assimilate it. And we hope we have taught you. We have tried to teach you how to assimilate it and how not to spend it. Now, every time my vehicle receives stimulus, whether it's from fear or anxiety or circumstance that might my vehicle might tend to be tempted to be angry, or to make a quick decision that I shouldn't make, or whether it's translated sensuality or thoughts because the vehicle is responding to the stimulus in ways that you might translate sensuality. All of that energy that is that you are in the ray of at that time is extremely valuable to you. And you are, in a sense, the reason that I titled this tape Virgins is because you're becoming the only true virgin. You know, first of all, you had to get your vehicle to become a virgin in reverse because you had to become pure again, as pure, now more pure than your vehicles ever were. And the more you receive the stimulus and do not spend it in any way, don't give in to letting it come out with anger or forcing you on a downer or spending yourself sensually or any way that you would spend it. Moods, anything that you can let that force out. Anytime you let the force out, you have lost what was your opportunity to have been gained at that time. Now, let's say that you keep receiving medicine and stimulus and medicine and stimulus. The end result is fantastic. So you should not, you've got to get your head turned around where stimulus does not threaten you. It should not be threatening to you. And I don't know how we can make this point clear to you. Like, I don't know how many times we've talked about it, but some of your class members still feel like when they get a certain amount of stimulus, they have no choice but to go and get rid of it. Whether it's in anger or spending themselves or being threatened by spending themselves. That we can understand. In a sense, why wouldn't you think that the most exciting, stimulating, or even the most sensuous thing that you could possibly imagine would be to have all that force in you unspent. I lost my voice for a second. I mean, what could be greater? What is it that even causes human vehicles to feel that when they, for example, the Virgin, any individual who has controlled all that is just almost an automatic prey for forces that would tap that source of energy from them. And once they become what the humans would call very physical or very sensuous, and they spin frequently, they have zero. They have come down to zero. And suddenly there is nothing about them. There's no force with them. There's no, it sounded like a line from Star Wars. Didn't intend that. But the point is for you to get in a mental frame of mind that when you are threatened by anger or moods or sensuality or any way to spend that energy, that you start realizing the good feeling, even if you have to think of it in terms of a sensory feeling in itself. There's nothing as great as letting that remain with you, letting that build. Because if you don't spend it, the only thing that can come as a result is very accelerated growth. Now you've got to have direction of how to utilize that energy as it builds, or it will spend itself. Even though you will try to keep it from spending, it will spend itself before you know it, and you couldn't catch it. You either you tried to lift moodiness, or you tried to lift hostility, or you had an emission in your sleep or something, because you didn't have direction. Now, in other words, you have to have a focal point to put energy into, so that any excess that your vehicle cannot handle in its natural growth process, that energy is put into that focal point. And then there is no excess. Your capacity has to continue to enlarge, and you have to have very clearly your mind on what it is that you are focusing your energy on. Now, as members of the class, what is your focal point? What is your focal point? Where can you spend your energy without misspending it? That's right. Don't think you could hear out of Study Base that in perfecting the way to the next level. Like, if you really know what that means, if you can say it, and not just say it, not just lip service, but if you really want to take a clue from every tiny activity you come in contact with during the day to learn how you can better yourself as a member of the next level, then you have a clear channel for effort to be directed in. Sure.
When you have the energy, if Joe agrees, why don't you wonder what you can do with that energy? In other words, you want to use that energy in the most right way, and you can use it in performance. In other words, when you feel anything like what Joe has been talking about, if you will convert it into energy, that feeling will go away. In other words, you are putting into use that energy in the most right way. Can you understand that? You understand?
Yes.
In other words, you can say you want to try to perfect the next level, the ways of the next level, but sometimes that may not be enough. In other words, you want to consciously say, I feel this energy, what am I supposed to do? Go off into the corner and get rid of it? Or kick the cat? Or get rid of it by being angry with someone?
Or you can jog and go get rid of it by jogging?
Right. Or should I try to see how I can use this energy in the most right way to be able to do everything better than what I have been doing? In a better way. My attitude can be better. In other words, consciously draw on it. And every time you use it, it will go away. It will go a little bit. That feeling will be less and less. Even though the vehicle may be bucking you. You may say, but I want to get mad. I don't like being nice all the time. I want once in a while to be able to get angry, But for once in a while, it's been a long time since I've gotten rid of the energy, so I'll just do it this once, and then it'll be all gone, and I'll be okay. Which isn't so, because you have to eventually be able to take the medicine full dose and know what to do with it.
First of all, you ought to know how to store it, and then you ought to know how to apply it. And you have to apply it as the circumstances that give you opportunity to prove that you want to perfect the way to the next level. As those circumstances arise many times a day, can you then apply this energy and convert to those circumstances? Now, this does not mean that you need to spend that energy on those ways. It does not mean.
You don't spend
it. It means that in a sense, you don't spend it.
Right.
In a sense, you're constantly building. In a sense, every member of the class who is putting out the right effort and the right desires becomes an explosive, virile vehicle that is absolutely vital and alive. That's what makes you keen. It's what makes you move quickly. It's what makes you aware of everything that you could be aware of, because that.
An example, and this sounds fantasy to you, but I think it will help you. When you're in the human world, you do many, you have the characteristics of the human, right? When you are learning to overcome the human world, we are trying to get rid of the human characteristics and trying to get you in the where you have only habits and characteristics of members of the next level. Let's say that now the members of the next level have this force that is translated to sex force or sensuality in the human level. Members of the next level have it also, but it isn't translated in that way. Now, every time you do not give in to sensuality, which has its many little branches, such as anger and hostility and so on, every time you do not give in to it, you build a greater mind into the next step. In other words, think of it as this way. I don't know if you all ever... you all know about levitating, right? Where in people who are into those things don't spin themselves. They don't get into sex. They feel like it's weakens them if they do, and they don't have the power to levitate. I don't know of anybody who knew how to levitate. I never saw it without a string attached to them in some way. But the theory behind it is what I'm talking about, the way they write in books. And think of it in a sense that every time you do not spend yourself in any way, you're building a force that will help you to levitate. Levitate, does it mean get up off the ground, or does it mean levitate into the next level? Levitate into where you can actually be a member of the next level. Let's say that you have a little gauge in your vehicle where you can't see it. The next level can gauge it like a temperature, like you can stick a thermometer in your mouth and find out what your temperature is. And let's say that they have a way of testing you according to how much of that force you have in your body. And when you get it built up into your body, this force built up, then you will have more powers, more ability to function as a member of the next level. But as long as you let a little bit of it seep out here and there, you're not making much progress. But the more you keep it in, remember how we used the example of letting air out of the balloon, leaking the balloon? In a sense, it's the same thing. If you try not to let any of that force leak out, no matter how much your vehicle says, it just loves to do it. Or my vehicle won't leave me alone until I do something about it. Then what you need to do is do like Stowe suggested, concentrate on using that energy in another way.
It doesn't mean spending it. It doesn't mean you have to go spend it. Like someone said, would it be okay if anytime I felt that to run jog? In a sense, you're just getting rid of it that way. You're refusing to let it build. Now, if you had your head in a different place, and you felt, let's talk about sensuality for a moment. If you had your head in the right place, and you felt sensuality, what you were translating sensuality, building and building and building to the point of it, just like you were going to explode. And of course, you could be excited in the right way, excited, instead of excited in the wrong way. But there's no excuse any longer for you to be so immature as to say, I had to go get rid of it. It doesn't even, we can't even understand why you would be more thrilled by getting rid of it. Why you would lower yourself to such a animal thrill than being thrilled by the building of it. Can you understand the difference? You should be able to be excited, or in a sense to use the word thrilled, by the fact that it's building. And it's tardy for members of the class to say, oh, I'm really having a hard time now because the thoughts just battle and my vehicle has to deal with all this. That's ridiculous. How many times have we taught you that when medicine comes, that your brain and your vehicle responds by wanting to play tapes that it used to play when you were in the world in relationship to that energy. And therefore, when your vehicle wants to start playing those tapes, there's no reason to feel negative about it. There's no reason, certainly, to get into those thoughts. You try to block those thoughts. But in a sense, there is reason for happiness, because you are building energy at that time. You're becoming more of a virgin at that moment. You're becoming a power. You're becoming a force that, if ever excess force builds, because your capacity can't quite handle it at the moment, then you can find next level pursuits in way to apply that excess force. But never would you have enough excess to justify giving into of choice, getting rid of it. We can't understand. To me, it takes the excitement out of it to give into it. Can you understand that? If you had your head in that place, in the right place, you would be more excited by the building of that force than you could possibly be excited by spinning and getting back to zero and having that force having to build again. Now, there are other applications of this. Let's say that my vehicle's giving me so much trouble that I start thinking negative thoughts about my vehicle is breaking down and I can't do this, I can't function this way, I can't function that way. That's spending. There is not one, the whole formula for next level growth is, there is not one thing that happens to me that I cannot turn into a positive. Not one thing. There's nothing that could happen to you that you couldn't turn into a positive. You always have the choice of turning it into a negative. You always have a choice of spending the force that is building the positive within. Or you have the choice of what might have seemed to be a negative. You can take it and make it positive. You can say there's only one reason why I'm having this difficulty. It's body change, or it's something that's happening that I can learn a lesson only in this way. And since what I want to do is learn the lessons that I'm here for, then thank goodness that it's happening so that I can learn those lessons. But if your attitude is, I can't learn the lessons until I get rid of this, you see what we're saying? Then you're cutting your own throat. Because it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't there as an opportunity for you to learn those lessons. Now, we've told you these things time and time again, but it's time that you remind yourself and not lower yourself to let things discourage you or to still translate at the level of thoughts are weighing you down, or your aches and pains are weighing you down, or sensuality just builds sometimes, so I just can't stand it. that's taking a positive and turning it into a negative. We can't even understand how you would choose to do such a thing at this point. So we warned you that the steps that you're on would have accelerated growth opportunities at this time. And we're glad. We like it. And we hope you like it. If you don't like it, you're stupid. I'm not putting you down because we know the value of it. That's the reason that we like it so. And we hope you know or recognize the value of it. Because from here on in, it's going to be powerful, accelerated process forward. If you hang on to growth and hang on with a good firm grip and make positives out of anything that would threaten to appear to you as negatives. Okay?
It's good to, if you have given in to spending yourself in some way, it's going to be more difficult now to stop it. But it'll only happen the first couple of times. It'll be so difficult the first couple of times. And then after that, it'll get weakened. But that's karma. I mean, that's
right.
Your fault, nobody else.
And you have to learn the lesson of control.
The longer you wait, the more difficult it will become.
You have to prove that you know where your control button is and you know how to push it. You know what I'm saying? Each of you has to prove that whether it's control over moods or control over spending or control over looking at the negative instead of the positive, you've got to prove that you can recognize those things for what they are, put them where they belong, have control over them, and enjoy keeping them in control. Because that's the basic tools of the next level, that kind of control.
I would be afraid to spend myself. I would be afraid of what I would miss if I did. Can you understand that? In other words, every time you spend yourself, you're going to lose something. Now, let's say you and maybe another classmate or something like that are the only ones out of the whole group who are spending themselves. Well, I would look, if all of you were spending yourself, then I don't think I would worry about it. But if I were one of just a few who were spending myself, then I would be afraid I would be left behind in knowledge and power and growth, what they will experience. Because only the eyes who are able to see will be the ones to see. Now, and if you don't ever conquer this, you're not going to be able to see. You may eventually, and if it takes 20 or 30 years to do it, but do you want to wait that long? And so why not just get control of that vehicle and say, I am going to do it now, and if I suffer the worst pain in the world, at least I won't die from it.
Now,
it won't kill me. You know what I'm saying?
He's not trying to frighten you to say, I would be afraid, and therefore you should be afraid, and use that as an excuse for a downer. You know, that's not what we're saying. And now, what are you conquering? Are you conquering sensuality? No. You're learning control. Sensuality is just a word that we put on a certain awareness of energy, of medicine that comes your way. That's just one label we put on a recognition of energy that comes your way. So you're not going to, you don't care that you don't even think about conquering this or that, and therefore never again having thoughts like that, or never again being threatened with the temper, or never again being threatened with the mood. You'll be threatened with those things that genetically are the portholes of threat to your vehicle. As long as you're here, you'll be threatened by them to a degree. So what? It doesn't mean anything. The test is control. The test is what you do with that energy when it comes your way. And when you feel those things coming that threaten you, in a sense, I'm just repeating myself, in a sense, you should be excited. And you should, here's a chance to build the building blocks of my force and of my development. And just know that if I disturb that in any way, if I don't keep that control at the point that control seems difficult, I lose ground. Now, understand? Is it clear? Well, do it.